Happy finals week and welcome to Out of Sight, Out of Time. My name is Daniel Cox, and this is my attempt at approaching soil and water conservation in an age of absentee farm ownership. Come along for the ride. Soil and water conservation is a complex problem because it involves agricultural policy, economic policy, market forces, weather, competition for land use, and it has a lot of players that are directly affected by decisions made by farm operators and land owners. What I want to concentrate on today is what we refer to as an absentee owner or an absent owner. This is an owner of agricultural land that is not involved in the day-to-day farming operations, that does not derive their income from farming. And they're an important audience for us, and they need to be a part of our complex approach to this problem. There are external risks to poor soil and water conservation efforts and poor farming management decisions. And there's increased demands through increased population and increased competition for land use. Conventional tillage, inverts the surface of the soil to make it ready for the next year's crops. In this case, we've got an image of moldboard plowing where the topsoil is turned over to create an even seed bed, reduce weed competition, and make it a lot easier to plant and expect a healthy and large crop. What it does, though, is creates risk to both the health of the soil and the conservation of water that falls on that soil, as the physical forces of wind and rain can carry those very, very valuable dirt particles that make up that topsoil, can carry them away in the wind or downstream in the water. We've got an example of exactly that, where we have agricultural property that the soil has been degraded down to what we would call that subsoil. The topsoil that we saw in the previous image just doesn't exist here. The soil does not hold a lot of organic matter, and it doesn't create a very good home for new plant life. So it's not very, very productive. Additionally, without that organic matter and air spaces that we find in healthy soil, water runs off of it, and when it runs off, it carries with it soil particles and soil nutrients in the form of chemical fertilizers downstream. This happened a long time ago in a large scale with the episode about 100 years ago that we refer to as the Dust Bowl. It prompted federal action, and those actions mostly relied on funding from the U.S. Department of Agriculture to implement. Those dollars were used to induce voluntary adoption of preferred conservation soil conservation management practices. Those were direct payments made by the government. That means made by you and me to a farmer to adopt good conservation practice methods. The benefits of conservation tillage have been known for a long time. It's not a new science. Our complex problem is not made complex because we don't know how to address it. It's just made more complex by some of the economic forces that we'll talk about a little bit later in the presentation. But we've known for a long time how to take care of agricultural land and how to improve surface water quality. That's not what we're dealing with. We just our complex problem involves getting decision makers, in this case absentee landowners, to buy into conservation methods that they may not be familiar with. When water runs off, it heads downstream. So water falls on land. It flows into ditches, ditches into streams, streams into rivers, and rivers ultimately into surface water. And we're going to see how the externalization of this risk has affected in real time an area that we're very familiar with. Those might recognize the north side of Ohio. This is Lake Erie, the western basin of Lake Erie, that you can see is suffering what we refer to as an algal bloom. It is the nutrients that ran off of that agricultural water has created a hazardous environment for the natural systems within the lake and for the recreational and industrial and municipal users of that water. Had the land upstream looked a lot more like this, with conservation tillage methods like no-till, the organic material on top of the soil that was left from last year's crop could have slowed down that water long enough for it to be absorbed into the soil, and it would be protected from wind erosion, as well as provide some nutrients for the next year's crop. Conservation farmers have typically participated in federal programs like the Conservation Reserve Program, a contract with the federal government to take their highly erodible land out of production for periods of 10 to 15 years. In order to do that, the farmers needed to be paid an amount that is at least equal to the lost profit. So where does that money come from? Again, it comes from you and me, and you and I are affected by those federal programs directly. While it has been effective in conserving soil quality and soil productivity, it has externalized some of the risk of water quality that has just not been addressed by the program. And this is the result. We have huge economic impact to the areas surrounding surface water sources. Every water user, so if you rely on a municipal system to bring your drinking water to your house, you're paying for it. If you're a commercial or recreational fisherman, or your economy relies upon that recreational community, you're affected by it. Who are the landowners? Our absentee landowners make up about 46% of the ownership of all agricultural land in the U.S. And of that 46%, only about 17% are currently enrolled in conservation programs. And those landowners, they derive about 30% of their income from renting that land to farmers. And they are reachable, but about 19% of them have no farming experience, but most of them have undergraduate or graduate degrees. The folks that are farming need to farm about 1,500 acres to support a family. Most of those farmers own less than 400. So that difference is made up of those owners that rent. So the farmers have to compete to rent the rest of that 1,500 acres. It creates a condition where they're set up to pay cash or share costs and expenses with the owner. And they're motivated by short-term profits. They're not always making decisions that are in the best interest of soil and water conservation. We know in the very short future, we're going to need to feed a lot more people. So if we take a look at our slide here, we've got Dust Bowl happening, conservation efforts through here, and by 2050 it is expected with the same amount of land or less, we're going to need to feed up to 9 billion people across the world. So the pressures on that agricultural land for productivity is only increasing. A complex problem needs complex solutions, and that is in the policy and messaging arena. We need to increase public awareness of the problem, and we need federal programs to change with elected official action. So public needs to pressure elected officials to change federal programs. And we need to leverage the clout of the downstream communities that are affected by bad conservation decisions in land use management practices. We need to engage the absent owners. We need to provide them with tax incentives, and we need to celebrate the legacy stories of responsible land stewardship. So we need to make heroes and change the story, and make the farmers that are putting our resources at hazard less of a villain in the story and more of a hero that are taking care of the natural resources for the benefit of all of us. We need to make those responsible operators heroes. And if you have the opportunity to dig in a little farther, take a look at the sources and learn a lot more about soil and water quality challenges and opportunities in the future. I want to thank you for taking a look at my presentation. I'm going to wish you the greatest good luck in the rest of your finals week efforts, and it's been a blast sharing the class with you. Take care, stay strong, good luck.